All right, gang. I apologize about the late notice with the class cancellation, but we received an email pretty late last night saying that we did have the option to keep the students out of the PEB building just because it's such an old building and it's going to be so hot today. I thought I would just let you guys stay home and stay cool. And if you have to go to campus and you're in a newer building, hopefully the air conditioning is working well in there. But in the PEB building, it's always a gamble. So I decided I was just going to cancel it and record this lecture and go over the syllabus again, and then maybe go into a couple of slides so that we hit the ground running on Friday. So we started talking about the syllabus on Mondays. A lot of students were late on Monday because we had a mix-up with the room. There's always kind of the first week confusion, so I apologize about that. So I just want to officially go over the syllabus really quick here just to make sure that we have it on record and you guys are aware of what my expectations are for the course. So we are meeting at 10 to 10:15 Monday, Wednesday, Friday in 117 PEB. We learned that the hard way this week. My office is in 345. It's the third floor of PEB, and I will be doing office hours from Wednesday to Friday. I'm sorry, Wednesday and Friday from 11 till noon. Okay, or if you need to get a hold of me at a different time, we can certainly Zoom. But just email me and let me know, and we can set that up. And here is my email address if you need to get a hold of me for any reason whatsoever. So, a bit about the course. So we are going to be examining skeletal muscle function specifically. The reason being is most of the physiology courses that you take briefly go over skeletal muscle physiology. So we're going to spend an entire course talking about it. We're going to be looking at the physiological function of it, both during physical activity, exercise, and there's a word missing there, disease. So we're also going to be looking at pathophysiology, and we're going to be looking at how exercise and disease are both stressors, right? And they change the morphology of skeletal muscle. They change the metabolism of skeletal muscle. They change the form and the function of skeletal muscle. So we'll be looking at both acute and chronic stresses. Acute would be something that is exercise-based, and chronic would be something that is disease-based. And we're going to see how these different types of stressors alter skeletal muscle function and metabolism. Let me just not bore you to absolute death, so let me kind of get through some of these quickly since this is probably the second time you're hearing this. Here are the topics that we'll be talking about in the class. This section here is kind of the good, and then this section down here is kind of the bad and the ugly, right? So the first few units we'll be talking about how the stimulus of exercise, whether that stimulus is either delivered acutely or chronically, will alter skeletal muscle function, and we will also be talking about a lot of the cellular properties that regulate those changes in function. So when we think about getting in shape, right? Like, oh, I'm getting in shape, I'm getting bigger, I'm getting stronger. The tissue is changing, but the tissue only changes after the individual cells begin to change. So we'll be looking at a lot of the cellular function of skeletal muscle and how this stimulus of exercise or this stimulus of disease will change the skeletal muscle from the inside out and ultimately change the function of the muscle, right? So let's move over here to course expectations. Attendance and participation is very, very, very important. I will base all the exam questions on what we talk about in the lectures. I will base all the exam questions about what we talk about during discussions during the classroom. Okay, so please be there. It's not a huge class, so I will get to know faces. I will get to know people. And if you're not there, I will call you out on it. So I also ask that you complete your readings on time. So most of these readings that I'm going to give you are going to be papers. Some of them are seminal papers. Some of them are just very important papers. And I'm going to assign them and tell you when I would like them to be done, simply because there's going to be a lot of readings. And I have taken this course at UIC, and I'm telling you right now, if you get the readings done beforehand, the lectures make a lot more sense, and I will try to be aware of giving you plenty of time to read things and kind of moving at a slower pace for you guys. So Please keep that in mind. I respect instructor and classmates. That's a basic. You guys should know that. Be personally responsible. I when I was teaching in California, I had this rule, and I thought I didn't really need to say much about it, but they had proved me very wrong. So please be responsible for yourself. Be on time. Have your equipment, have your devices, have your papers, have your reading done. Get the exams done on time. Just crush the exams for me. Don't make me chase you and make you be a better student. Please be responsible for yourself. So if you have any exams that we missed, we are not doing any makeup exams. If there are real world issues that you're dealing with, we can certainly talk about that. If you can't make it for some reason, we'll try to figure it out. There are some expectations to the rules. Some exceptions to the rules. So, you guys can read this on your own if there's an emergency or whatnot. We will talk about that. But I do expect everyone to have their butts in the seats during the exams. Cancellation of class. We got to try that today. I gave you more than 15 minutes notice, and if I'm not there within 15 minutes, you guys can take off. Academic integrity, just really quick about that. I realize there are so many apps out there right now that you can download and use. I realize that there's artificial intelligence apps. I realize that there are writing apps where you can type in a sentence and it will make you sound like you are a prestigious professional writer. Please do not use them. I'm very aware of your writing capabilities at this stage in your academic career. You guys have apps, and we also have lots of software that can detect those apps. So do not put yourself in this situation. Please use your own words and create your own work, and don't make either of us go down that road where I have to call you out because you sound like you are a Nobel Prize winner with how well you can write in your composition and your communication. And that app, all that stuff kind of falls under that plagiarism thing. So again, don't do it. We will have 4 exams. I will let you drop the lowest exam, but you have to be present to get that to have that privilege, right? So if you just decide not to show up, I will not drop the exam. If there is a family emergency and you can't be there, maybe then I'll give you that option, but we'll have to talk about it. You guys will have a practice written assignment, which I'm going to give you guys on Friday, and I just want to kind of see how you write. You will have 2 small writing assignments in this course, which will basically be either mini lit reviews or you will be discussing some papers that I assign. Those are worth 25 points apiece. You will have 4 verbal presentations with team members. I am not going to be doing all the teaching in this class. There's a lot to be learned from you having to collect information, decide what is most important of that information, and then deliver that information to other students and also receive questions from students. There's a lot of skill sets to be built there, and I want you to develop that. So please be ready to have these 4 presentations as team members. When we get down to the schedule for the course, I'll show you where those presentations are. You will also have to have data extraction sheets. I did show you what those were in the class. I will show you what those are momentarily after I get through the syllabus. Basically, every time you read a paper, I want you to use these sheets that I have created for you to extract information about that paper. There will be 10 in total, which will be worth 25 points apiece. And if you look at here, guys, these are pretty heavy, right? So these together are worth another exam grade. So even though you get to drop one of these, if you don't do these, that could be problematic. So please make sure when I assign you a reading, which I'm going to do, I'll probably do it today on Blackboard, start filling out the data extraction sheets. And again, when we go to take exams, I will let you compile some of those data extraction sheets. And I do ask that when you do these DESs or DES, you handwrite them because I don't want you to just copy and paste from the article that you're reading. And if you want to use them for an exam, I need them handwritten because there's something to be said about connecting with information when you take out a piece of paper and you take out a pen and you read and you connect with that paper. So I'm just trying to get you guys to create better memories for yourself and get you to have that intimate interaction between your pen, paper, and your article. And then in addition to the data extraction sheets, you will all get some participation points depending on how well you participate. I made these points specifically so that if you're at a 94, you can get up to 100, or if you're at an 85, you can get up to a 91. So I selected these points very, very specifically to help you out. Okay, so when we're talking about exams for the course, it will cover everything that we talk about in the lectures, discussions, the assigned readings. It's all fair game for the exam, which is why you have these handy dandy little sheets here so that you can be better prepared. And then we both get what we want, right? You get help on the exam and I get help and I get evidence that you are reading the articles and you're getting points for it, right? So I'm rewarding you twice. You're getting like a double treat because I'm helping you with your exams and I'm giving you points. You will have some written assignments. I will talk more about that as we get closer to those dates, and I will show you where those dates are when we get to the course schedule. We will have verbal presentations that you will be doing in collaboration with two or maybe have groups of 2 or groups of 3 on this presentation. And you will be responsible for maybe presenting on something that I have assigned and also getting some additional information. We can even talk about having you guys present on things that are of interest of you that might be under the umbrella of what we're talking about. So we can have a little bit of wiggle room with that. I want you guys to get the most out of this class and enjoy what you're learning. Data extraction sheets, I did kind of talk about that. They are with 25 points, participation. And if you are a grad student, you will have an additional assignment in Unit 4. So I will call you guys up additionally, and I'll show you where we're going to put that information or where we're going to put that assignment as we get into the course schedule. Here is the grading scale, pretty standard, right? So now we're going to get into the course schedule. So here are the dates, here is the week, here is the topic, and here are the projects and the assignments that we'll be doing, right? So it's week 1. And we're kind of getting off to a bit of a slow start because we missed class on Monday. We had this heat thing today. So, of course, we're going to be pushed back slightly. And keep in mind, this is a lot of material. I am more concerned with quality rather than quantity. So if there's things we don't get to, we don't get to them. But this is an overall layout. A best case scenario, we get all of it done. So I'm going to give you guys a sample paper on Friday. And then once we get back to class next week, we will start talking about muscle fatigue. We will start to talk about skeletal muscle mechanisms that are associated with fatigue. And then I will basically upload the papers. They're already in Canvas. They're in folders where it says Unit 1, 2, not Canvas. You guys don't use Canvas. You use Blackboard. When I was at California State University, we used Canvas, so that's just it's just in my memory. We currently have folders in our Blackboard based on units that say unit readings, and all of those papers are already in there. But what I'll do is I'll pull those papers out and I will put them in an announcement saying, hey, I'm assigning this. And I expect this read by this date, and I expect the DES sheets to be done by this specific time. So I will be very interactive with all of you so that we don't miss anything, and it helps keep me organized as well because there's just lots going on, and when I write these announcements, it helps me keep myself organized. So this is the schedule. Now what I want you to pay attention to is this here, team presentations. In every unit, we will have a section of team presentations. Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and Unit 4, team presentations. And this is where you will be presenting on something that we have discussed in the previous weeks. Now, this is the reason why we're doing this. The papers that I'm going to be giving you are very vast. They have a lot of information in there. There is no way possible for me to present on everything. So what I'm hoping by doing the team presentations is that we overlap our teaching. And not only do we overlap our teaching, but we also overlap the information that is being given to the students. And it is not by coincidence that I have exam 1 right after team presentations. So what I'm trying to do to make everyone crush this class, let me go back. I'm giving you data extraction sheets that you get to use for the exam. I'm asking you and your team members to present on papers that we already read, right? I'm presenting on the papers that we read. There should be no reason everyone in this course does not get an A and crush it. I have put fail-safe after fail-safe after fail-safe to help you learn, right? So the team presentations will be usually the few days before the exam. I did that on purpose. And we will, on Friday, I'm going to give you guys a game, maybe 2 games in class to play. And you can start thinking about who you would like to be team members with. And again, you can use your data extraction sheets for the exams. Not all of them. You can compile some of them. You get to use them. Right? So we have my lectures, your lectures on the same material, and then we have data extraction sheets. You should all be professional muscle physiologists after this course because of how I sent this up, okay? And then we'll be talking about various concepts, so fatigue, human fatigue in specific situations, skeletal muscle blood flow regulation, restricted blood flow training. Some people like to do restricted blood flow training. I have some catch-up days here, right, for either presentations or review sessions. Again, catch up and review. So I've given you guys a lot of time, a lot of space, and a lot of reinforcement to kind of really crush this course. So, and then in the last week of school, this is where the grad students will do other presentations that I will assign. And then when we get into the units, here are all the readings for Unit 1. Here are all the readings for Unit 2. Here are all the readings for Unit 3. And then Unit 4 is down here. So for each of these, you will have a data extraction sheet, right? Now, I said you only have to turn in 10. You can see there's much more than 10 papers here. If you do want to turn in more than 10 and you want to do it for every paper you read, that's great because then you get to use that information on an exam. But if you don't want to do that, if you just want to do 10, you want to do the bare minimum, that is absolutely fine as well. These papers are all in the folders that are labeled unit readings, and I will basically tell you when to start reading certain papers. Now, here's the unfortunate part. The first unit of lectures, this information is kind of spread out through each lecture, right? So, I would advise reading these sooner than later, but there's a lot of information here that repeats information. So, you might read this paper, and this paper talks about a lot of the same information, but yeah, I would get going on that sooner than later. So then while we're lecturing, you have that information in front of you. You have your data extraction sheets. You know what I'm talking about. But if not, then, you can backtrack and read the paper and look at my slides, okay? So there's no surprises. Everything that you guys will be testing on will be coming from the articles, the lectures, and even your presentations. I will be writing things down during your presentations as a group, right? So when you do your team presentations, I will take information from that and I will use that on the exams as well, okay? So that is the course in a nutshell. I will momentarily take you to Blackboard just to show you where everything's at, and then we'll dive into the first kind of official small lecture. All right, so here's a look at Canvas, and I just want to walk through this quickly so that you guys know where this information is at. I'm in the teacher's view, so it's slightly different than the student view, but information's all the same. So if we look over here, I have the course syllabus. If you want to download it, it's right there. I said here is the tentative syllabus. Please keep in mind that these things will change. Well, that's already kind of happened because this first week has been a bit of a disaster. So we're already kind of behind a little bit. If you go to this next section here, you'll see that the data extraction sheets are right here. You can let's see if I can view it. Open, let me see if it opens. And it did, right? So here's the data extraction sheet. So when you read one of those articles that I have assigned for you, you tell me the title of the article, the authors, the publication, and the date. Critical words and abbreviations. If you're reading things and you don't understand some of these words and you're like, man, is Mr. B going to nail me on this? Is he going to ask me what this definition is? Well, I'm giving you a chance to write it down, right? And if you need to write down more, you could always use the back. And then I'm asking you to do shorthand responses while reading. So while you're reading, what is the background, right? So what was the context for this research? What has been studied or determined already? What will they tell you? They'll tell you in the abstract what has already been done, and they'll tell you what they're trying to do, what hole they're trying to fill, or what void they're trying to fill. I'm asking you to just kind of shorthand what was the methods or the nature of this study. Was it a double-blind placebo? Was it a did they do a crossover study? What did they do? What kind of data did they collect? What were the results, right? Just jot these things down. So that way, if I say, hey, when we talk about paper by Smith and al., what were the major findings? And you're like, oh, I got that on my data extraction sheet. I already did the work, right? And then you can compose a well-written response because the information is in front of you, right? And again, data, conclusion, what are the next steps? They always tell you what they're going to do next in the discussion. They'll say, hey, this is what we're looking for in our next study. And then what was the significance of this? This is where I really want you to explain to me you ask yourself, so what? All right, so they spent all these years, all this money, all this time, all these students helped find this. So what? What are we going to do with this information, right? And then there's some other things here that you can think about more critically, right? So if you're like, okay, what are some words here I don't know? And then let's say they kind of repeat those words throughout, you could really kind of write those things down here, right? And you can talk about what their hypothesis was. What is the general subject of the study? Are they looking at type 2 diabetes? Are they looking at cancer? Are they looking at how to make the muscle bigger? Are they looking at how to make the muscle more endurance focused? Are they changing the morphology of the muscle to make it more explosive? What are the general or the specific subjects of the study, right? What are they looking at? And this will really help you kind of explain in your own words what they are doing. Methodology, again, if you shorthand it here and there's something that you want to go into more detail about, let's say the methodology, let's say they used Northern blot, Western blot, and PCR. But let's say PCR was the type of device they used that got the most important data. Well, then you can kind of expand on that down here, okay? Expand on what the PCR found. On the results, you can expand here, right? I ask you what results are for here to shorthand, but here I'm asking you to expand on certain things that you think are really relevant, right? And this paper is a data extraction sheet, right? So shorthand, just quickly, I don't know what that term is, write it down. Here, just while you're reading, briefly jot down some bullet points, and then once you figure out what was relevant here, really go into detail on these things here, right? And if you need more space, turn it around and write it on the back. So I am giving you these sheets. You have to do 10 of them for 25 points, and the devil's in the detail. If you have a lot of detail, I'll give you a lot of points. If you just if this looks like you gave your little brother or little sister a Crayola and it's just purple all over and there looks like there's no detail or no attention to detail or no pride in your work, I will not award you anything. I'm a stickler with that. So that is what I expect from the data extraction sheet. So let's go back to Blackboard. Now, there's another thing I have here that could help you while you're using your data extraction sheet. And this is a questionnaire for your data extraction sheets and your team presentations, right? So if I ask you to maybe read an article, let's see. Oh, I don't have that folder up. Let me see if I have my readings up. Nope, I don't. Okay, so let me just go back to this. Let's say I assign you an article and you're like, man, I really don't know how to prepare this article for my presentations. Don't worry about it because I have you covered, right? So I have this sheet here, which asks you a bunch of questions to ask yourself and your teammates. When you're thinking about the overall objective of the paper, I'm asking you, what is the article type? Is it a review? Is it a primary research? What is the title? Why is the title relevant? Who are the authors? In the introduction, okay, I'm asking you, what is the research problem? Was there any mention of any previous studies, right? So if you kind of just follow these breadcrumbs, this will help you with your presentation. What are the materials or the methods they use? I have a bunch of questions here, right, that you can ask yourself. You and your teammates can ask each other. What were the results? Okay, what were their key findings? Were the results reliable? Were they valid? Did they have significance? Did they have a p-value that was significant? Were they statistically non-significant? And if not, were they trending in a certain way, right? And then there's a bunch of things here to ask for discussion and for conclusion and for references, right? So these are just things, these are questions for you and your teammates to just kind of use while you're reading articles and you're preparing your presentation, right? So those two things are in this data extraction sheet section, all right? So we went over the syllabus, we went over the data extraction sheet, and then here is the reading by units. So if you go in here, I have unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4. If you go inside, here is all of the articles, right? These are what we have to read for our exams, and these are what you'll be using for the data extraction sheets, and these are what you'll be using for your presentations, okay? And all of the test questions will come from this information, so it is all available for you. I have this in here as well. This is going to be the assignment that I give you on Friday, and I'm going to have you practice a data extraction sheet. And what is this about? Well, this is about how to properly read articles. So I'm giving you a freebie, okay? I'm letting you go home this weekend, read this very brief article that is very simple on how to methodically and effectively read articles. And while you're reading this article, it's very short. It's very, 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 very short. I want you to use a data extraction sheet, okay? And you're going to use a data extraction sheet. You're going to fill it out by hand. You're going to bring it to me on Monday, and you're going to say, here is my DES, give me 25 points, right? So let's say you don't know what you don't know what the word, you don't know what original research is. Well, then you'll pull out your data extraction sheet. You'll put that original research term in the section for terms, and then you'll define it and be like, oh, that's what that is, right? And you can just kind of use that data extraction sheet any way you want to kind of fill in the information that you read here, okay? Very easy, very simple, give me points, okay? That is going to be your assignment that will be due on Monday, and I will upload that information on Blackboard probably Friday or Thursday night, all right? And then I will also have the slides available for you. I'm still uploading slides now, and then eventually I will get a team presentation schedule for you guys after Friday when we play a game, okay? So that is Blackboard, and that's a very simple explanation of it. So now let me move into presenting you with some slides on reading literature and reading research articles. Okay, guys, so I am going to start lecturing now on material we were going to cover today in class. And basically, it's just going to be a very short lecture on reviewing, interpreting, and publishing scientific papers. because this course is going to be based entirely on scientific papers. So, and we're also going to give you an assignment on Friday where I'm going to ask you to read and use your data extraction sheets and bring it in on Monday, handwritten, so that you guys can get some points. So if you download these lecture slides, I've already skipped slides 1 through 11 because those slides are just talking about the syllabus, talking about office hours. You see that? Talking about what my expectations are, what we're talking about in the class. So I'm going to skip all of this stuff and I'm going to start on slide number 11. It looks like this, so you can follow along. So this course is going to read a lot of articles. I know it looks like a lot, it is, and that's why I'm providing you assistance with the data extraction sheets and the team presentations, and I just want to make sure that we hit the mark. So why am I using these articles? Well, I'm trying to keep things very cost efficient for you. I'm trying to keep things cheap for you. You don't have to buy a textbook. It's a bit more timelier than textbooks, meaning that we can kind of get through these papers a little quicker than some of the long chapters in textbooks. It's more flexible for us. We can talk about more specific physiology with these papers than we can with a textbook, right? And we're going to be looking at some classic seminal papers. So these are the reasons that we're going to be using some of these papers. And also, when we read journal articles, they require some more skills that are beyond reading. I need you to summarize, I need you to interpret, and I need you to communicate. Well, we're covering the summarizing and the interpreting with the data extraction sheets, and then we're also covering the communication with the team presentations. So in this course, I'm trying to build skill sets for you guys that are beyond just reading, regurgitating, and taking exams. I'm trying to weave in some skill sets that will be very important for you in the lab if you're already doing research here at UIC, important skills for you to go out into the world and do interviews, important skills for you to do presentations and be an authority in certain topics, okay? So it's just not about the content, it's about what we do with that content. So here's a bit of the overview is we're going to talk about publishing, why we publish, and the components of the paper. And this is going to cover your homework assignment on Friday night into Monday, components of a paper. I do want you to know that back and forward. And we will let you guys do a data extraction sheet on that. So why do we publish papers? Why do we do it? Well, you as a student, whether you're a master's student or a PhD student, or you're your own principal investigator, you have to publish papers. You need them for career promotion. You need them to be recognized among your peers. You need to do them so that you can contribute to the scientific papers and the scientific community, showing what you have found so that others that are researching that can also see what you had found. You might want to demonstrate new treatments or new interventions or new policies such as ACSM does. If you read any papers by ACSM or NSCA, they do position papers and they tell you what are some new things that they have found that they stand behind and they endorse. And also, when you're doing publications as a student or as a PI, or let's say you're an MD, PhD, let's say you're a doctor, medical doctor, and you want to publish as well, you are demonstrating a culmination of work. You are showing that you can read papers, you can find what the community has already found, but you can also find the voids in what the community didn't find, right? And that's generally what we focus our research on. So if we're talking about specific things associated with diabetes, we might say, okay, well, you know, all of these groups across the world talk about glucose tolerance and glucose control, but none of them are talking about this enzyme called Src kinase. And that's what I'm going to focus on. So and then you might do research on Src kinase, which is an enzyme. And then you might publish on Src kinase, and you demonstrate to your peers and the rest of the world that, hey, we need to consider this enzyme, right? We need to think about this enzyme that might be involved in diabetes. And it shows that you are capable of finishing that process, right? Reading, comprehending, understanding, finding the void, Once you find the void, you pursue that void, right? You figure out the different methods, the different research methods to find that answer. Then you write a discussion talking about what that answer means, and then you publish it, right? And you've contributed successfully to the scientific community. So this next slide is basically talking about, well, why bother ourselves? Why are we reading all these papers, right? Well, papers generally tend to be more current than textbooks, right? Textbooks are usually out of date. So textbooks require new editions, which can take 10 years, 5 years, 15 years. So during that time when textbooks are trying to come out with a new edition, researchers are publishing papers that are keeping the scientific and the medical community current, right? Journals are generally more accessible to students than textbooks, right? So we can, if we want to look at something called, we want to look at how muscle contraction in autism increases cognitive function. Well, we can go to the National Institute of Health. We could look in their database and we could find, we can get access to other researchers that are looking at that, right? So we can get access and we can get really, really specific results on what we're looking for. You can get good explanations on data, right? So when you look at these papers and you're like, well, I don't understand what they found. Well, when you read their results in their discussion, they'll explain that pretty well to you. And then you might be able to replicate what they have done, right? You can see what the latest developments are in doing research. And where would you find that? You would find that in the methods section. So maybe one group of researchers are using a new method, right? Let's say you're trying to figure out how two proteins are communicating with each other inside of a muscle cell. And you're like, man, how do I figure this out? Well, you would find a paper on immunoprecipitation, and you would read about how that method of protein research basically tells you if two proteins are communicating with one another, right? So when we use these papers, when we use these papers, they give us so much more insight than textbooks do, and they're free. So you guys get them for free. And then also one day, maybe you're doing it at UIC, you will be publishing these papers as well. So to simplify things, as students at UIC, as students in Muscle Phys, as students of the Department of Kinesiology and Nutrition and Applied Health Sciences, we want to learn to do research and read research and understand research because guess what? That teaches us to think critically about things. And that is the most important skill set we try to give our students at UIC. We want you to be able to approach problems in the lab with writing, with research, with your courses, even in your personal life. We want you to be able to approach things critically because we're teaching you how to learn something. And when we approach things critically and you think about them beyond the surface level, right, we gain perspective. And that perspective, specifically in this course, is what I'm trying to get out of you. I'm not going to ask you to read something and regurgitate information. I'm going to ask you to read something, think about it critically, extract things that will help you think about it critically, and then gain a new perspective. And that is how we're going to try to test your abilities in this course. Okay? So I have this quote here that I like to share. It's a pretty interesting quote by the former director of the National Science Foundation, and it says, "Research is to teaching as sin is to confession. If you don't participate in the former, you have little to say in the latter," right? So if you don't do research, if you don't understand the process of researching, if you don't understand how to read these research papers, then you really aren't going to be an expert in the field, right? We have to understand these mechanisms. We have to understand the cellular environment. We have to understand the tissues and the organs in a way that no one else does, because we want to be the best that we can possibly be as students, as researchers, as medical professionals, as strength and conditioning professionals. So we have to do deep dives, and that's what these papers are for. I want you to put on your snorkel, put on your fins, and everything we do, I want you to do a deep dive. Okay, so as most of you probably know, we have a very established scientific process of writing and publishing, and you will see this when you read these articles, right? Generally, the first thing we do is we generate a research question, right? You guys are all familiar with this. I'm just beating a dead horse right now, but I'm just saying it to say it and get it out there. How do we generate a question? Well, we have to read all of the research that was conducted before we came along and decided that we are interested in muscle physiology, right? So we have to read what the forefathers of research have created or what other groups have created. We have to understand what has been done and what has been proven, right? So we want to review and summarize the literature. That's why we have review articles, which we'll talk about momentarily, right? And if you are a PhD student or you're a master student and you have to write a paper, well, I believe your chapter 2 is going to be your lit review, right? So you have to read a bunch, you have to review it, and you have to summarize it. What does that sound like? That kind of sounds like a data extraction sheet to me. So when you're doing those data extraction sheets, we're doing baby little miniature review and summary sessions, right? I'm just reinforcing that skill set. Once we have a research question and we read what has been done, well, then we refine those questions. And once we refine those questions, we develop a design or a study. And if you're here at UIC and you're doing that, well, that design and that study has to be approved by your committee, right? That's why we have a proposal committee. They say, yeah, that sounds good, or no, that doesn't sound good, right? Then we execute the study. Usually takes a long time, bang your head against the wall for many, many years, because when you were here, and you were super excited, you're like, oh man, everything's going to go perfectly. And then the first 6 months of your execution have been nothing but mistakes and no results and buying the wrong antibodies and you're getting the wrong findings and you want to jump out a window. That's usually happens when this occurs. Then we're going to write up the results, right? That's why I have 2 mini writing sessions for you guys in this course, because I want you to be able to write. I want you to be able to communicate what you found. I want you to be able to say what you mean and mean what you say and get rid of the fluff. I want you to write intentionally. Then we have to present the results at a scientific community. Man, if I go back to that syllabus and you have team presentations, and we're reading and writing, and we're writing and presenting, man, that's why I organized this course the way I did. And then once we present at a scientific conference, we use their feedback to write and submit to a journal. And this is generally the process. And that article that you are reading for your homework will tell you the exact same thing, okay? It might have been a while since anyone has formally talked about this to you, right? And we know that we have 2 different types of research, right? We have primary research articles, which we'll be reading a lot of, and we have review articles. I think at this stage in your careers, you know what these are. If you do not know what these are, please read this and the paper that I assigned you. We'll also talk about that. Please make sure you understand the difference between those. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And if you don't understand the difference between those, use your data extraction sheets to identify the major differences between those. Okay. And then if you read this and you still don't know, I have this section here that talks about it as well. You can read that because it's big print. And I don't need to read that to you because I'm pretty sure you understand what that is. There's also other types of papers, right? Position stance papers, like I just mentioned with ACSM. So we have the primary research paper, we have the review research paper, we have position papers, right? We have meta-analysis papers, which is just taking all of the information that has been written about in the past 10 years and compiling that together and running statistics on that. We have editorial letters, right? So there's all these different types of publications, and they all contribute to the pages of science, right? So they all serve a very important role in the pages of science. And then we get down to this one here. So if we're talking about a original research paper, and we're not talking about a review paper, they will have an introduction, right? So this will be the pieces of that paper, right? The introduction is a brief review. They have persuasion in there, and they have a purpose or a hypothesis, right? The persuasion is basically what is the need, right? What is the uniqueness of this paper, and what is the need of that paper? So when you're writing the introduction, you want to sell yourself. You want to sell what it is you found, what is the problem, and how you plan on solving the problem. And you're going to see that with all the introductions that we read on the papers here. And they'll say, here's the hypothesis, here's what we hypothesize, or they will say, this is what we intend to demonstrate, right? So they're planting that seed in your head so that while you read their paper, you're following along, and you obviously are going to basically say, yeah, you found it or you didn't find it, right? You need to take a stance on these papers. Original research papers will also have methods, right? They will have an analysis. What's in the methods section? Well, they have the subjects, how they recruited, if they got IRB approval. They'll have the research design, right? They'll have details of the method. So who was the controlled? Who was the experimental group? They'll have the treatments. If they're doing medication, they'll have dose and duration. If they're doing exercise, they'll have dose and duration. Maybe it was 4 weeks at 4 times a week, and they had their heart rate above a certain level, right? They'll have statistical analysis, right? They'll tell you if they had their success with significance, right? You guys all know this. You've read tons of papers. I'm just reiterating, right? I'm just kind of showing you what those things are because, again, I'm just giving you a little practice run with the paper I'm assigning on Friday, right? So what comes next after methods? We get the results, right? And the results basically are going to address the statistical design. We're going to have tables. We're going to have figures. They're basically going to say, what did they find, right? Here's what they found when they did this research. And if you don't know what these things mean, you're looking at it, you're like, I have no idea what this graph represents. I don't know what I'm looking at here. Well, not to worry, because then in the discussion, they'll tell you what those things meant, right? They'll tell you what they found. If they say, hey, scientist, young mind, you don't understand these graphs, it's okay. In the discussion and in the results, we'll explain it to you. We'll tell you what we'll find, and we'll show you if it was statistically significant, and we'll show you if it was even relevant, right? And then they have the conclusion and references. You guys know this. You know the skeletal outline of a research paper. I'm just beating a dead horse, right? Because that's what I'm giving you guys for your homework. And speaking of homework, here's what I'm asking you to do when you read your homework assignment Friday night. I'm telling you, the paper I signed is so easy. You'll be done with it in half an hour. And then I'm going to give you another practice paper next week where I'm going to ask you to use the data extraction sheet, right? So again, beating a dead horse. I want you to read the paper Friday. I will announce it on Blackboard. You will use this. You will bring that into me on Monday. And if I didn't make that clear, here is the paper I will give you on Friday. Here is what I expect you to fill out. This paper is beating a dead horse, talking about everything we just did here. Man, Mr. Blackburn, how can you make this any easier? I don't know. This is like Christmas. It's like we're in August. It's like an August Christmas gift to you. And guys, to be honest, full transparency, the reason I'm doing this is I'm just trying to get you some extra points that we can get ahead of, so that when we get tired and fatigued later in the semester, we got this little kind of safety box here with some of these points that we can provide later. So even though it might be easy, even though you're like, oh, I know this stuff already, I'm just giving you a chance to get some points that we can use at a later time, okay? So keep that a secret between you and I. And then that is it, okay? So I will reiterate this on Friday, what I expect. And then Friday in class, we're going to play some games, okay? And we'll answer any questions that you might have about this information, okay? And if there's time in class on Friday, we'll start lecturing about muscle fatigue. Let's just see what happens. Take care. I'll see you guys Friday.